Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live. We're continuing with the green belt skills, negotiation and optimization skills. We started last week and Temba is a chartered accountant with more than 24 years experience in corporate financial management. He also holds a master's in business administration. He has been a consultant and trainer in risk management, asset and liability management, and investment management for several corporates in 13 African countries. Over a period of 15 years, Temba has done presentations in personal financial management in to several white-collar and blue-collar conference audiences. Most relevantly today, Temba is talking as an upcoming author of the book, Manage Your Personal Finances Like a Black Belt. Temba believes that it is possible for one to retire in 5 years if you have an income, and for one to achieve the level where you manage your finances like a black belt, one has to have hard financial skills, the right mindset, developed level of consciousness, and developed habits. Last week, we learned that if you're somebody who likes reading the newspaper, you better start with the financial section and not the gossip section. We also learned that you don't do lotto. By now, we know that creating wealth is not a rich get rich quick thing. You don't wake up wealthy. It's a process. So even lotto, you pay to get the ticket. So there's nothing for free. It's a process. And we thank Temba for taking us through this process of us learning how to get to the level of managing our finances like a black belt. Over to you, Temba.
Tafadzo, thank you very much for that incredible introduction. It's an incredible privilege to join you once again and to travel this journey of becoming a black belt. And I always cherish and am looking forward to such, let's just call them coaching sessions, because that's what really what they are. Today, I just want to continue on what I started on last week, and I was talking about, the black belt level. For those of us who are joining us for the first time and listening to this live stream video for the very first time, let's just take some time to recap on some of the things that we've been covering so far. So when we began this coaching session, I made it clear that I had written a book, which Tafadzo has also referenced. That book will be coming out, let's just say, according to our plans, just before we go for the festive season. So Tafadzo will let us know once that book has been published. And then, we'll send out the message, to all of us. In that book, I mentioned two things which we've been emphasizing in these coaching sessions. The first thing that I mentioned is that based on my years of experience as a banker and based on my own experience handling my own personal finances and other finances of corporates, I believe that if you've got a stream of income, it's possible to financially retire in 5 years. And those are the principles that we teach in the book. The second thing that I mentioned, which Tafadzo has also referenced, is that for you to manage your finances like a black belt meaning the highest level of proficiency as far as managing personal finances is concerned, you need developed habits, a developed level of consciousness, and some hard skills. Talking about hard financial skills, we traveled a journey together. We spoke about the yellow belt level, where we aimed to just emphasize the skills on budgeting, preparing a priority budget. We introduced concepts of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how we need to align our budget, to that. We then went on to the orange belt level, and it was all about getting out of debt. And I gave you my own ideas of how we can get out of debt. At one time, I was deep into debt to the level of 2 million rands, that is. And I had to work my way out of that hole of being, of being in debt. Now I'm totally debt free, and I've been able to generate passive income. And I, use the lessons that I have gained over years, to coach people on how to come out of debt and how to experience financial freedom, so to speak. When we started talking about the greenbelt level, we really emphasized two words. The first word that we emphasized is the word optimization. So at the greenbelt level, we want to optimize our cost base. We want to optimize the way we spend. We want to optimize our tax obligations. The word optimization simply means maximizing or making the best of what we have within the constraints that we are experiencing. So we all understand that when it comes to finances, we operate under certain constraints. And that's what we started talking about, how to optimize. We also spoke about a wealth creation plan, which I will reference today as well. So in completing the discussion today, I want to zero in on negotiation skills, and I also want to zero in on optimizing our tax obligations. So what I'll do at this stage is just to project the same slides that I started projecting last week, and then we can work our way through those slides. So I think we ended up talking about our wealth creation plan, and that was slide 8. So within the hour that I have, I will possibly talk about maybe 3 more slides or 4 more slides. Then we will complete our discussion on the green belt. But the point that we really were trying to emphasize on slide 8 is this. I don't know of anybody who has reached black belt status without a plan. So you need a plan to create wealth. We did mention yesterday that when you start creating wealth, when you start embarking on a journey of being financially independent within 5 years, there is a lot against you. The odds are stacked against you. We likened that to the force of gravity, that keeps you basically gravitating towards the earth. And we mentioned several things that are working against you. We use the analogy of a rocket, so when a rocket is being launched into orbit, there is a preparation stage, there is a lift, a struggling stage, there is a pre-orbit stage until it gets to the automatic pilot stage. And those are the stages of wealth creation that we go through. And we took some time to talk about that last week. Just to tell you a story, I think last week I was telling stories quite a lot. Today, early in the morning, I went to see an optician. And, they told me that I needed to replace my spectacles. And, it was a sizable amount of money that I have to pay. But one of the success stories that I would want to share with you is that because I have learned about negotiation, and whenever I spend money, I try to negotiate, very, 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 very hard. So I said to the optician, you've given me a quotation. Is there any way you can discount it for me? All right. I will not tell you what the amount is, but based on the specs that I gave the optician, it was a sizable amount of money. And what they did say is that, let's see, you've been a customer with us for some time. Let's see what it is that we can do. The long and short of it is that I walked out of that place with a 15% discount. In fact, 17% discount to be precise. And that's a success story. So at Greenbelt level, we learned that we cannot just spend money, especially sizable amount of money, without negotiating. And the reason why we are negotiating is because we know that every cent counts, every rand counts. If we invest that amount of money, it can amount, to an incredible amount of money in a few years to come because of the laws of compound interest working in our favor. So at the green belt level, we need to appreciate this eighth wonder of the world. I think it was Isaac Newton who says compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. That's one of the things that we want to really appreciate at the green belt level, that for you to be wealthy, you need to put the laws of compound interest, to your favor. Every time you are very successful in negotiating and saving money, that amount of money must be put aside, and it must work for you. It must be invested at wealth creating rates of return. And when you do that, it will be well with you. Let me just give you an idea that should remain with you after this lesson. The idea that I want to give you is that if you are working harder than your money, you will never reach the black belt level. Money can work hard for you, especially when it is put to accumulate. It can actually work hard for you. The thing about money working hard for you is that while you are asleep, the amount that you have invested is actually growing every other second, every other minute. So if you are working harder than the money that you have put aside, just know that you are on a journey to nowhere. You're actually in a rat race. The people that are able to defy the laws of financial gravity are the people that are, number one, putting the laws of compound interest to their advantage by investing in various ventures, so that while they are asleep, their money is working hard for you. Because you don't want to get to a stage where you are working harder than your money. So that's the thing, that's the idea that I want to leave basically with you at the end of this presentation, that financial retirement is all about making sure that your money is working hard for you. Talking about negotiation, I think we must take all opportunities to negotiate. I did tell a story last week of this guy who was bold enough to negotiate a salary increase at work. And I don't know where he got the negotiation skills from, but he was really bold enough, to do that. Beloveds, one of the reasons why I come at the invitation of Tafadzwa to present these sessions is because I have made mistakes along the journey. One of the mistakes that I made was when we were buying our first property. This property was advertised for a sum of money that I will not mention. By then, I had not learned about negotiation. And I am embarrassed to tell you that when I put in that offer for the property, because I liked this property so much, I actually put an offer which was slightly above what the owner, wanted for the property. Because in my mind, surely for such a property, there would be people who are bidding for the property. So that's why I put in an amount which is, higher than what he was asking for. And, the owner did not hesitate to accept the offer. And I was actually surprised why he had done that. It's because of all the offers that he had received, he hadn't, received an offer which was equal to what he wanted for the property. And looking back to what I did then, I'm very embarrassed because I could have negotiated. I could have negotiated for 10% less, right? Before I even went into the property. So that's what we are talking about at Greenbelt level. You're not going to spend a sizable sum of money without negotiating. You're not going to, after you've realized those savings from negotiation, you're going to set that amount aside so that it works hard for you. So what are some of the things that we need to know about negotiating? By the way, you might be in a business deal. These days, I've learned to negotiate and I have perfected my negotiation skills to such an extent that even in business, I negotiate quite a lot. Negotiation is not about compromise. It's not about compromise. There are people who think that negotiation is about, compromising your position. That's not what negotiation is. In fact, negotiation, a good negotiation is a win-win scenario. You've got two people that are aiming for a particular outcome. They talk and, they are looking for a win-win, outcome, right? If I had time, I would have told you a story of a billionaire that I was speaking to yesterday. He was essentially telling me about how he started his multi-billion financial institution, which is operating in a number of countries in Africa. He realized that he didn't have capital, right? Because sometimes we think that to start a business, we always need capital. But what he really taught me yesterday is that there are several definitions of capital. They could, there's something called social capital. Capital can be very intangible. He said he went to this larger financial institution and he was able to negotiate a multi-billion-dollar deal without capital himself, because he said to them, look, I'm bringing intangible capital. I might not have $1, but I have got, intangible capital. And the financial institution actually, signed a huge deal, with him. Those are people who are able to negotiate. A negotiation is a win-win scenario. You bring certain things to the table, and sometimes, for you to negotiate, effectively, my experience teaches me that one of the effective negotiation skills is the ability to listen, the ability to do your own research. So you need to research, before you go into the negotiation. What are the weak skills? What are the weak areas of the other party? What is it that I can capitalize? I don't want to use the word capitalize because I don't believe in negotiations where you take everything from the other party. But it's very important that you do your own research. Even in things such as buying a property, I could have done my research instead of just looking at the value that was being offered, the amount that was being offered. I could have independently asked for an independent valuation and tried to see what it is that I could have done. By the way, let me just share you some wisdom which I got from Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is a master investor. And one of the things that he said is that when you are going into a deal, you make your profit from day one. And that profit from day one is essentially from the negotiation savings that you realize. Say, for example, the property is being offered for 6 million. And if you are able to negotiate 2 million downwards, then you have made a profit from day one. And that's what he believes in, because the future is uncertain. And because the future is uncertain, you need to, to make your profit from day one. Obviously, I'm adapting the investment wisdom that Warren Buffett has to negotiation. Warren Buffett's philosophy is all about buying undervalued stocks and at a discount. And those undervalued stocks will appreciate, over time. But he believes in making a profit from day one. So if I were to share with you some of the things that I've worked with, that I have learned as far as negotiation is concerned, is that do your research. Don't be in a hurry, particularly when you get to levels where you are in business. Don't be in a hurry to conclude deals without having done, your research. Don't be fearful to ask for a discount. It's very important to know your priorities, because once you know your priorities, you know the non-negotiables of the negotiation, so to speak. So don't enter a negotiation without having clarified what your priorities are. You need to consider who it is that you're negotiating against. There are certain people who are very, very good negotiators, And when you walk into the room, they actually know that you have not done your research, and they will capitalize on that. But another very important thing about negotiations is that you must know when to walk away. In fact, if you don't know when to walk away, you will never be really successful as a negotiator. So you should actually have a figure in mind where you say, if that figure is not attained, then I will walk away. Negotiation is not about being desperate. If you are desperate, the other party will actually see that you are desperate. And I've known people who, even if they are desperate, they don't show it, and sometimes they pretend like they are walking away from the deal, just to keep the negotiations, happening. Always good to keep your timelines, in mind. I know I'm giving you general ideas, but what I just want us to achieve at Greenbelt level is, number one, to value every rand, to value every dollar, so that we do not leave anything on the table that rightfully belongs to us, particularly when it comes to large purchases. There is nothing that can't be negotiated. Trust me, there is absolutely nothing that cannot be that can't be negotiated. If I had time, I would have told you stories. I run a training company, and some of the things that we do in our training company is to host conferences. So these are training conferences where we invite a number of speakers. I remember going to this particular 5-star hotel where we were hosting a particular conference, and they charged me an amount of money. Instead of immediately swiping my account to pay that amount of money, I just said to the person, just wait a few minutes. I just want to research on something, here. Then I went back to my car. I came back, and then I said to the person, I can pay this amount, and I realize that you have already given me a discount. But is there any other way that this amount could come down? I had exhausted every other idea that I had of the amount coming down. The idea actually came from this person, who then said, by the way, if you were a member of our loyalty club, you would be entitled to a 15% discount of the amount that is being quoted today. Then I said to them, how do I become a member? And they showed me how I could become a member, which I did in 2 minutes. I was already registered as a member, and I was able to capitalize on the 15% discount, which was quite a large amount of money. And once I realized the discount, obviously I put it aside so that that sum of money could work hard, for me. But what was quite interesting to me was that instead of just paying the amount of money that they had quoted to me, there was another way of that amount, coming down. And the idea actually came not from me, but from the person whom I was doing the deal, with. And since then, I've been a loyal member of that particular hotel group. And I use my points, my loyalty points, to get discounts and further discounts. So when we talk about Greenbelt level, it's about optimizing your situation. And I find sometimes that some of the loyalty, not all loyalty schemes that companies come up with, but some loyalty schemes are very, very useful. I don't want to use this particular platform to advertise certain loyalty schemes, but there is one particular loyalty scheme that I am part of, and I have familiarize myself with the rules of that particular loyalty schemes to such an extent that when people see me traveling on aeroplanes and going from this place to that place, they think, oh, this guy has got lots of money. No, it's not like I've got lots of money. I'm just using my loyalty points, which I have accumulated through my spending behavior, to purchase air tickets. And sometimes I'm able to go on holiday with the family based on the loyalty points that I I have accumulated. So that's the optimization that we are talking about. It's about looking at your spending and seeing, is there any way that I can optimize this spending to my advantage? And some of the parties that we do business with are very keen to give you a share, of that profit, whether through loyalty schemes. I can almost tell you now, obviously, as part of the things that I have to pay for, I need to pay for airtime. Sometimes I need to pay for fuel. But I'm now able to use my points, which I have accumulated at a certain level with that loyalty schemes, to finance, that kind of expenditure. And these are the things that we are talking about at Greenbelt level. It's about not leaving money on the table. It's about, when I'm doing business with you, let's create a win-win situation. I am purchasing something from you. Is there any way that you can reward me for the purchases that we are doing? And many people are able to do that because they realize that, look, a customer is somebody who is valuable, who can keep a particular business going. Once you are able to develop those negotiation skills, you can then take them into business, even negotiating quite a number of things. By the way, don't you find it sad that most of the minerals that are mined in Africa, in the world, actually come from Africa? But Africa actually gets a small portion of the value of the minerals. Do you know why? It's because sometimes, even as a people, we are not very good at negotiating, right? So you've got all these resources that are being mined, and sometimes we don't negotiate, and I find that it's very critical at personal level, at business level, even at country level, to be able to negotiate for your people, particularly when we conclude deals. It upsets me quite a lot, sometimes when I look at the deals that have been struck, to find out that the people from whom the resources are coming from have not actually benefited a dime. But the people who have benefited a lot are the people who are good negotiators, and they take everything, from the table. And there is an increasing realization that even within our leaders, I'm talking about political leaders here, we need to be able to negotiate, as far as the use of our resources, is concerned. And so that's what we're talking about when we, talking about, negotiating. My time is, flying. So what I would want to do now is just to move to tax. Remember, at Greenbelt level, we're talking about optimizing. So far, we've spoken about optimizing our cost base, trying to make sure that we are being rewarded for the spending that we are doing with the different companies, trying to make sure that whenever we are spending money, we negotiate, particularly with large purchases, with large purchases. Another area where we need to optimize is taxes. Remember, death and taxes are the, certain, I think somebody said it, the two certain things, in life. When I'm talking about taxes today, let us just be clear. I do not believe in tax evasion, all right? I actually believe in the biblical wisdom that says you must render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. There are people who think that they can make financial progress by evading on taxes. That's not what I advise, people to do. But I also believe in tax avoidance. And when we talk about tax avoidance, we're basically talking about optimizing our tax liabilities or our tax payments so that we do not pay more than is necessary to Caesar. That's what we are talking about. And that concept is the concept of tax avoidance. So there's a difference between evading taxes, which is illegal, and avoiding taxes, which is totally legal. But for you to avoid taxes, you would need to plan in advance, which is one of the skills that we are talking about at Greenbelt level. So there is a lot of tax planning that is involved. I'm not necessarily expecting every other person who wants to be a black belt in personal financial management to know the intricate details of how tax rules work. That's not my expectation. In fact, at Greenbelt level, if you get used to using tax experts, I think you're getting wiser. So there are some people who believe in saving money and therefore they don't engage the best of experts. I don't think that is wise. That's not an optimization strategy, especially when you are in business. And this is the advice that I will give to anybody in business. You're not going to save money by getting second-rate advisors. If you are in business, you might as well want to get the best tax advisors that are there and the best advisors in the various areas that you need to be advised on business. If you are to spend sizable amount of money in that, I think that's money well spent. So cut on everything else. But when it comes to advisors, and I'm singling out here tax advice, just make sure that you get the best advice that there is, out there, because that advice is actually worth it, right? So let me just give you a general idea of how tax authorities, levy, taxes. So number one, you get a sum of money out of your sweat, whether you're an employee, that amount of money could be a salary. So in tax language, that is gross income. It's an income that is used. Part of the income is exempt. So when they are levying that tax, they will say what is due to you as gross income. Let's subtract the exempt income. The exempt income is income that will not be included in this pool of money that you'll be taxed in. Then from there, they then deduct expenses, which we'll call deductible expenses, because not all expenses qualify for deduction from tax. So now you've got gross income minus exempt income minus deductible income. That's the amount of money that you'll be taxed on. Then they multiply that by a tax rate. That's simply the formula for paying the amount of tax that will be, payable, to you. So once you know that, you can either work with exempt income or deductible expenses or even the tax rate. So when we're talking about optimizing your tax, we are basically saying, what is it that you can use within the law to increase your exempt income, to increase your deductible, expenses, or to minimize your tax rate, right? That's simply what tax optimization is all about. And here is the thing that I have found out over the years, and I'm sure you have actually found it out. Generally, if you are an employee, you are taxed very high, right? I think it started with Warren Buffett. You will see that in my coaching services, in my coaching talks, I talk about Warren Buffett quite a lot. Why? Because he's one of my favorite characters. He's a guy that I like. I've read about Warren Buffett. But the thing about Warren Buffett that I wanted to talk about today is that he actually made an observation. And the observation that he made is that he was actually paying less tax than what his executive assistant or his secretary was actually paying. And, he raised it as a moral issue to say, why is it that, I, as a wealthy person, am paying, less tax than what my, executive assistant or secretary is paying? And that's the unfairness of the world that we live in. The unfairness of it all is that if you're an employee, you are taxed very high. And the people that are wealthy, sometimes do not pay their fair amount of tax. And the reason why they don't pay their fair amount of tax is because they use the law and they get the best tax advisors to advise them so that they do not pay, tax. So at some point, I'm not giving this as a rule. At some point, you might want to start a company, because what I have seen is that the company tax rate is lower than, for individuals. So let me give you an example of what we have here in South Africa. In South Africa, companies are taxed at 28%. Obviously, there is talk of that rate going down. But if you are an employee, particularly if you are earning, let's just say 1.7 million and above, you get taxed at 45%. So you can see, the tax rate for, employees is very, very high. So I'm just giving you, by the way, this talk is not tax advice at all. It's just stimulating your thinking. Number one, why you need to get a tax advisor, but also number two, to begin to think that, there are things that I can do, to save on taxes. So what about small businesses? If you were to ask me, Temba, as far as taxes is concerned, for small businesses, what are your tax optimization strategies that you would give as advice? Number one, if you're a small business, or if you're a business or you're a taxpayer, ensure that you are fully tax compliant. I do not have time to tell you stories of how even tax authorities would levy fines and sometimes interest on people who are not tax compliant, right? Know what you are entitled to claim for, right? And utilize everything. Sometimes what I find is that the record keeping, whether of employees or even of small businesses, is such that they cannot support with evidence of what they are entitled, to claim for. So therefore, ensure that you keep an accurate record of all your expenses, along with, the till slips or invoices that relate to them, and keep all those documents for at least 5 years before getting rid of them. You need to investigate, the correct levels of depreciation, and be aware of what type of tax, you are liable for. Because sometimes you could be liable for, at certain points, you might want to be taxed, based on turnover taxes, depending on what would be suitable, for you. So those would be things that I would want to trigger in your thinking. What about if you are a salaried, employees? Remember what I said, there's generally very little scope to optimize the tax obligations of, an employee. But by contributing towards a retirement fund, you can increase your deductible expenses and therefore minimize. By opening up a tax-free savings account, if you are an employee, anything that you see where they are saying tax-free, investigate and see what it is that you can do there to benefit from the product. Donate to, here I'm using the abbreviation SARS, which is the Tax Levying Authority in South Africa. But, if you are listening to this in a presentation from another country, donate to registered charities, because then once you donate, in South Africa, we call them public benefit organization. Once you donate to them, that qualifies as a deductible expenses. Join a medical aid scheme. If you join a medical aid scheme, sometimes you get tax credits for those deductions. Keep a logbook if you receive travel allowance, because you need that logbook of the kilometers that you have traveled as evidence to substantiate the amount that you can deduct with regard to the travel that you are doing. If you've got, a company car, remember, if you've got a company car, that fringe benefit that you are enjoying is something that is taxed by the tax authorities. Therefore, you can keep a logbook to, justify the expenses that you have done on business, and therefore you can be able to claim them. So we do not want to leave anything on the table when it comes to deductible expenses. Claim commission related expenses if you are on a commission, basis. Claim business travel if you are, a commission earner. Claim your daily, costs if you receive, a subsistence, allowance, or claim expenses if you earn a non-salary income. For example, if you if you are a self-employed, person. So those are some of the things that you can think about as you optimize your tax, obligations. It's very, very important that you understand the tax rules. So without, going more into the time that I have been allocated, Tafadzwa, this is what I wanted to say to complete the discussion that we started on, yesterday about, the green belt, level. So let me just summarize before I hand back to you, Tafadzo. At the green belt level, we need to start thinking about a 5-year plan. I will elaborate on that 5-year plan when we come to the blue belt level. That's when we will design an Excel spreadsheet and think about what will that 5-year plan of wealth creation actually look like. And then we will add some detail to that 5-year plan. So at Greenbelt level, I want you to think about your wealth creation plan. 5-year plan. So far, you have learned to budget. You have learned to get out of debt. You are having a developed mindset. At Greenbelt level, we need a plan, right? We'll elaborate on that plan. So that's what we've been talking about. Secondly, you need to have a mentality of optimization. And we ended up speaking about negotiation within that, discussion on optimizing. And the way I approached negotiation was all about not leaving anything on the table. And, looking at, it could be rules of certain loyalty schemes, and trying to see what it is that you can do to advantage yourself when it comes to your spending. We then ended up talking about tax. I believe that tax is one area where we need to really, optimize. Do you know that when you're alive, you will be paying taxes? Even when you die, you will still be paying taxes. So your estate will also be paying taxes. And that's how tax rules are unfortunately designed. So what we need to do is to optimize our tax, liabilities and our tax payments while we are alive. And at some stage, at the brown belt level, once we put, estate planning into place, we will need to talk about what it is that we can do, what structures can we put in place, even to minimize the amount of taxes that we will pay when we die, right? So over to you, Tafadzo.
Thank you very much, Themba. For me, it's such a privilege to sit under your coaching. I'm challenged, and if I don't get to the black belt level, I don't know, but I'm really committed, and I hope others who are also watching are also inspired to work on their finances and to implement that which you've taught us through your coaching. My takeaway is, if my money is not working hard for me, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm definitely going to work hard so that my money will work hard for me whilst I'm sleeping. If anyone has a question, I don't see any questions. You can type in the comment section at a later stage, or you can just write us an email at tafazwa@tafazwamazbuko.speaks.co.za. You can also check Themba's website, www.duplexinstitute.com, or his YouTube account, Manage Your Finances, Your Personal Finances Like a Black Belt. Thank you very much for joining us. If you find our page helpful, you can also just leave a review on the page, and we appreciate your support. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend ahead. Cheers.